On today's show, it's the 1 year anniversary of the trade. Today, we're going to be discussing reactions to the trade, then how the seasons went for both teams, and what the future of both teams look like with whether players want to stay or go, flat cap, draft capital, all that on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And thank you, Armando, for joining the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great. It's great to be connecting with you
Mhm.
once again, discussing the trade.
The
One year,
trade.
the trade. 1 year later, and it we think about what these teams were prior to the trade, after, and projecting to the future and all that. Which is something we're gonna get into in today's special crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Flames. And I want to go back to this point 1 year ago, where the news happened, where you first heard the news versus what happened after. I don't personally remember where I was when I first heard the news that Matthew Tkachuk wanted out of Calgary, but I do remember where I was when the trade officially happened. You actually tweeted a few days ago
Yeah.
where you were when you heard the news that he wanted out. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I was in Lake George, New York on vacation with my family, and we were at Six Flags Great Escape, and we were heading from the theme park to the water park. So I checked my phone after changing or whatever, and I just see that Tkachuk has basically requested a trade, and I just had to go about my day as if the trajectory of the Flames franchise and my show did not just drastically change. But where were you when it all happened?
Well, it's funny because I I, I went back to actually my episodes from last year as well. Actually, last night, uh, to to go back to what I said then, and my again, I don't remember where I was when I first heard the news of him
Mhm.
wanting out, and I was listing all the teams that he wanted to go to, um, which was St. Louis, Vegas was one of them as well, Dallas and Florida. Those were the four teams that were listed. And I said that St. Louis was most likely the destination because of the history with his dad and all that
Right.
stuff. And I said at the time, I don't. How do they pull it off with uh with who the rumors of Huberdeau possibly going the other way? And I'm like, I'm not sure if the Florida Panthers are willing to do something like that. And boy, was I wrong about it. But the way I heard about it was I was getting ready to go to bed because this trade
Yep.
happened at around 11:20 p.m. Eastern time. I got a missed call from my Wednesday guest host, and I ignored it on purpose because I had a 10-hour shift the very next day.
Oh
So,
no.
so and then I make the mistake of checking Twitter after like 20 minutes of it, and then that's when I heard about the trade. And I said, "Oh, that's why he called me to
Yeah.
tell me all about that." And I went from possibly going to sleep 30 minutes later after that original missed call to staying up for 3 hours just checking Twitter, seeing the reaction from fans, getting on Twitter
Yeah.
Spaces with one of my fellow podcasters, Kirby Lupol of the FLA Cats Hockey Podcast at the time as well. Just jumping on there and just being shocked, and just and then and then we see the next morning
Mhm.
all the fans on Twitter, or even the media members on Twitter who were asleep when all of that happened, because it happened on a Friday night too. Not
Right.
everyone goes out to bars and
No.
drinking on Friday night. Some people have jobs the next day, so it's crazy to think that how many people were asleep when it all happened.
Yeah, no. I went to bed early because, I'd come home after vacation, I was tired, and just I was like, it's Friday night. Like, there's no way like anything's gonna happen. I'm gonna go play Animal Crossing and go to bed. An hour later, my boyfriend comes storming into the bedroom screaming, Matthew Tkachuk to Florida. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then the return was kind of still being worked out, but I know that, obviously Huberdeau was the first one, and I think a first round draft pick or whatever it was. And then like I get up, I run over to my computer, I'm refreshing everything. I was shocked to hear that it was Mackenzie Weegar also coming over. I feel like that's kind of lost sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a huge return, but no one was going to top that.
Yeah, and you think about, and for the Florida Panthers perspective, when it came to where they were as far as age, going into their late 20s and having both of those contracts coming up, you were never going to sign both of them. And for the Florida Panthers side of things, at the time they got already the value they had from Mackenzie Weegar being a guy who was at the later part of the 7th round in 2013 as well, and developing him through the ECHL, the AHL as well, and then being a top pair defenseman as well, even playing on his on his non-natural side too,
Yeah.
as well. And you look at that with of course, we have to discuss the flat cap for that's still hurting a lot of teams. I mean,
Yeah.
Calgary went into this specific offseason with the least amount of cap space as well, so it's hurting a lot of teams right now. And just to make that work with both Huberdeau's and Weegar's salaries, I mean, Huberdeau's contract also went from a no move clause to a modified no trade, and that's when Bill Zito at the time took advantage of that, and just the waiting game and not knowing when someone like Tkachuk would be available, and then it's an opportunity that he felt that he couldn't really pass up. And of course, for the Florida Panthers side of things, the getting younger part of it as well. And
Right.
that was a year where the Panthers were already coming into the year with a whole bunch of dead cap on their roster. They there was a lot of not a little bit of criticism on the Mackenzie Weegar part of the trade too,
Mm-hmm.
because what's the blue line gonna look like in the year coming into it, and that's where you say, okay, Gus Forsling is ready to take that next step for the Florida Panthers, being a top pair
Mm-hmm.
defenseman. That's you feel like this guy's ready as well. And of course the Panthers in their future, they're gonna maybe have to make a decision on Sam Bennett if they think Anton Lundell is ready too. So this isn't the
Right.
first one. This is not just the first step in the Florida Panthers is uh when it comes to evaluating who they think is going to be ready in. And I said this on my yesterday's show. Smart GMs get rid of a guy a year too early versus a year too late, and they feel that he
You
felt
mean
that way with Huberdeau and all that.
you mean they don't let them walk for
Yeah,
nothing?
don't let them
And
walk for nothing.
wow, that's
So
that's almost like I
Goodrow.
feel like general manager 101. And
Hmm.
I hate when people like try to like Monday morning quarterback trades and everything, but like to me, with the few critical thinking skills I have, that one jumps out. Like you don't do that. And the Flames are in a similar situation next summer, or I guess technically this summer too, trying to trade some of their pending UFAs. And but it's with a whole nother general manager. And I don't know. I think that the Flames kind of they shot themselves in the foot so many times last season. I'm shocked they still have feet, but I think that this is just something that they're going to have to work out. The cap space is something we're just going to have to hope and do a run a Hail Mary or whatever they say for football.
No doubt, and it's something that Craig Conroy has a
Mm-hmm.
very difficult job at ahead. And actually, let's discuss this more in segment number 2 here, as
Yes.
the Florida Panthers and Calgary Flames were both fighting for playoff spots towards the end of the season. One team, of course, made it. One did not, but we'll discuss more about that. Jonathan Huberdeau struggles all next here on this special edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Flames. But first, Jess, tell us all about FanDuel.
FanDuel is where you can take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. All you have to do is bet $20 and you will land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting from everything money line, where Shohei Ohtani is going to land, and who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. And thank you, everyone, so much for tuning into this very special crossover of Locked On Flames and Locked On Panthers. You can find both our shows on every podcast platform as well as YouTube. We love hearing from you in the comments, and let us know where you were when this whole shindig went down, because this is like, I'll never forget where I was.
Yeah, for sure. And it's it'll something that will be ingrained in my memory for the as long as I have a memory, for sure. As long as that. But let's just talk about the season that was for both Calgary and Florida. Both superstars, and Tkachuk and Huberdeau went through different head coaches going into new systems. The Florida Panthers were dealing with a new head coach after letting go of Andrew Burnett after winning a President's Trophy. Jonathan Huberdeau was going into a situation where he was flying cross country, sunshine to a lot of snow. Even changed his car that he had. He had a picture of the local dealership there for a certain truck that would be great for driving in snow. I mean, I've never driven in snow. I've only been a passenger, and that's not
10 out
easy.
of 10 don't recommend.
Yeah. So I hope that if I am in that situation, that I will be able to deal with it well. And really, for the frustrations of Huberdeau and the relationship with the coach and Daryl Sutter at the time, I remember there was this one specific quote about why did Huberdeau have to go to the locker room. Is like, oh, he had to take a blank.
Yes, fill in the blank.
But I think there's just more to that. There's just, I don't think it was just, I'm not sure if he was telling the truth, but also the tone.
He was getting worked on by the team doctor or like the physical trainers and whatever. Like he was hurt, and Sutter just like made a joke out of it, and that rubbed Huberdeau the wrong way, especially for it to happen so early in the season. Allegedly, this is just what I've heard.
Yeah, and then being demoted to the third line at points in the season as well, when this is a 115-point player as well. I know he's getting acclimated to a new system and all that stuff, but when you think about exit meetings as well for Calgary, there was a lot of a common denominator that was going on there as well about what the relationship was with the coach and all that. And yes, a lot of the problems for Calgary were the goaltending as well. It's not all on Huberdeau. I know there was a 60-point difference as well, but there one common denominator is how former Florida Panthers prospect Jacob Markstrom played in the season as well, being a Vezina Trophy finalist to what happened. And Dustin Wolf is knocking on the door there over in Calgary as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure going there, and also turnover. I spoke about Craig Conroy earlier. Ryan Hutzka is also there as well, but those are both internal hires. Do you think that they made the right decision with internal hires based on who they worked under, or is it just kind of staying the course with so much uncertainty, with so many of the expiring contracts possibly wanting out?
I think that it is a combination of like all of this. There were so many moving parts to last season that has obviously led up to now and the decisions that lie ahead. But I do think that it made a lot of sense to hire somebody that has been within the Flames organization for like 10 or 12 years and learning, because not only are you learning what to do and how to navigate things, you're learning what not to do. And that is something that I think there was a lot to learn and plenty of mistakes to learn from in, Craig Conroy's like front office years before he was a GM. And I I knew that they were either going to hire Mitch Love or Ryan Huska, and I think that either of those choices would have been great. Obviously, they hired Huska, and Mitch Love went off to the Capitals, and the way that it's working, it feels like they're doing it for comfortability, and I'm okay with that. I think obviously when you start getting too comfortable, you're not really holding people accountable because you're afraid, because you're friends, whatever. But it definitely feels like this is a step in the right direction, management wise, like behind the scenes, and I guess technically on the ice too. But bringing in someone like Mark Savard to help with the assistant coaching and just beefing up the offense that was not there last year is very important. And I really just want everyone to feel better than they did last year. And I know that's like, oh well, you should like want them to be competitive. Yes, but there's also like the human aspect to this of
Mm-hmm.
like, could you imagine moving from sunshiny Florida to like Syracuse, New York, where there's 8 feet of snow in the dead of winter, and like you don't know anyone. There's not much to do. Well, I guess Syracuse. Okay, there's really not much to do in the winter. There's just it's a whole new change of life, change of pace, and everyone is kind of angry at their like it's not fun going into a work environment where you hate your boss or
Mm-hmm.
your boss is going to pick on you and stuff. Like that's not fun. I think things are going to be a lot different this year.
Yeah, and even if their record is what it is this year, it could be a step in that right direction, knowing that
Mhm.
going to work at ease is something that will give a possibly better impression. And I know, and yes, we know about the rumors of people wanting out, and there's still a standstill. Basically, if Elias Lindholm is even going to sign long term, we heard the reports of him getting reportedly being offered a long term deal as well in that as well. But it's a big difference when going in and yeah, the arena situation is what it is as well,
Yeah.
which also kind of maybe is depending on whether they like playing where they. I mean, in the
Yeah.
Panthers side of things, it's more of location. The arena's great. It's
Yeah.
just location. It's just location that a lot of people have issues with, but also about for Jonathan Huberdeau as well. For him, he doesn't stop training. He's always posting about his training as well.
Always.
He had his charity golf tournament this
Yep.
summer in Quebec as well, raised like 350K. I don't know the exact number, but a lot of
Yeah, it
money
was a
for that too.
lot.
So he's involved in the community. He's smiling. He loves his mother, which is
I think
very.
that's so sweet.
So it's it's
So
it's a it's definitely something definitely that I'm cheering for someone like him. And let's also talk about what he said in his exit interview, which he didn't lose his talent all of a sudden.
no, that's the
So
thing that is driving me crazy. People are like, "Well, Huberdeau fell off." He did. Yes, he fell off, but he like tripped over a rock while riding his bike. He's gonna
mhm,
get back up. He's never going to be a 115-point player again. I'm just I'm confident in saying that, just because of the way the Flames roster is assembled. But he is still able to produce and put up points. Like that didn't just go away. And
mhm,
people are just like, well, once it's gone, it's gone. No, it's not.
yeah,
Playing on your off wing and clashing with your coach, who is probably going to use that as like, retaliation. He's setting you up to fail.
yeah, and that's really a hard adjustment period
Yeah.
for someone who said he lost his confidence but not his talent. Big difference between the two
Yeah.
sides of things. And for Matthew Tkachuk, on the Florida Panthers side of things, he was the team wasn't playing well, but he was still producing points. At times, he was averaging 2 points a game for a little while, even just to keep the Florida Panthers afloat. And he was the one guy that when Paul Maurice went on an epic rant in Toronto back in March, he was the only guy who was looking straight in the eyes of a coach. And of course, that's a lot of learning from his dad too. So
Oh yeah.
it's a difference, but when you're possibly bringing in a second generation hockey player in the mix who has been in locker rooms as well from the time he came out of
Yeah.
the womb as well. And also the outside noise of what these guys hear about. I mean, even when the Panthers were underdogs in every single series, that's just a fact. Matthew Tkachuk saying we don't care what people think, and
Right.
I that there's very few quotes that I take at face value.
Right.
That is one of the few ones that I took because it proved in their play. They and even though in their round one series against Boston, they every single game that they trailed to start the game, they lost, but that started to change the tides as the later rounds came about. They started learning how to come back from games.
Yeah.
It took them until February to get their first 3-game winning streak of the season too.
That
So
Flames went until like March. So I
so
get it. Like I think the thing about, and we say it all the time on Locked On Flames, but there's nothing more motivating than someone saying you can't win this.
mhm.
There's like people are you're desperate to prove people wrong. You're hungry to win. And yes, they did lose in the cup final, but to me, even if they eliminated my team in the first round, it was so fun to watch this underdog 8 seed come in and make it as far as they did, and just they did the thing, and they'll probably
Mm.
do it again at some point. It's special. It was really special to watch.
No doubt. And unfortunately, with an extended playoff run comes lingering injuries from it, with
Mhm.
Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour looking to miss the first few months of the season coming up. But hey, what matters is that you're healthy when the postseason comes around, and that's what the Panthers did have on their side entering the postseason.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, their luck ran out after Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final when Matthew Tkachuk broke his sternum on a hit from Keelan Kolesar there. So now this will be a good opportunity for us to transition to segment number 3 of this special crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Flames to discuss more about what is ahead for
Yes.
these two franchises.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In your mind, what is your hope for the first month of the season for the Panthers? Or maybe up until like winter break, like Christmas break, I guess.
So my hope is that Paul Maurice plugs in the right holes as far as how to put the deep pairings together,
Mhm.
as far as Ekblad and Montour being out, and chances are we're going to see Oliver Ekman-Larsson be part of the first pair at least to start, and
That's
there's some.
right. I forgot about
Mhm.
that. Oh my
OEL
god.
is with the Panthers. Dmitry Kulikov is back in the mix with the Cats as well. Uh, this is the second year in a row where the Florida Panthers signed someone who was bought out by a previous team. Colin White was that guy last year, and taking on a reclamation project last year. This time it's Mike Riley on the deep pair, and
Mike Riley,
they
high sticking king.
yeah, and they signed a flurry of left shot defensemen
Mhm.
for their roster this year, and that's really what's hoping to hopefully keep it together when these guys are ready to come back. And of course, Spencer Knight is looked to be back in the mix.
Yeah.
We don't know if he's going to start in the AHL or the NHL. They did sign Anthony Stolarz, so it's very important to have that third goaltender, whether it is Spencer Knight or Anthony Stolarz. Still, they did get bigger. They did get tougher, at least on paper, as far as getting Duclair out, bringing Steven Lorentz to be on probably on the fourth line. Evan Rodriguez, who is a late bloomer in his career, he was a guy who can be plugged on Barkov's wing as well, or maybe even the second line as well. But for Calgary, we I spoke a little bit about Tyler Toffoli getting traded to the New Jersey Devils and all that. The really the only one who's been granted the request that he's wanted, and that pick, I believe, that they traded for Sam Bennett originally was traded back to the Calgary
Yep.
Flames as moving parts there when they first got Tyler Toffoli as well. But for the Panthers, at this point, they don't care about first, second, or third in the Atlantic or even wild card. We saw that with this season. What matters for them
Yeah.
is being healthy. And at this point last year, I was comparing the two windows for the Florida Panthers and the Calgary Flames. I mean, Calgary made it to the second round, for crying out loud, two seasons
Yeah.
ago, and you were losing Goodrow and Matthew Tkachuk. And that was a move at the time that Treliving felt that was avoiding a rebuild. Not saying that and it can be justified as well. I'm not
Right.
saying that it's the wrong move neither. You were going to go from possibly no window to a small window there. The Panthers were going from a small window because if they kept Huberdeau and Weegar, their window
Yeah.
might have been like 2 years at most with this. Matthew Tkachuk extends that and going to a
Yeah.
Stanley Cup final in year 1. But I got to ask you, with
Yeah.
last year I said no window to small window.
Yeah.
At this point, is there even one at all?
It's cracked. It's cracked open. There's a slight breeze coming through, but no, like their window right now is there's just a window frame. There's really no window. I would say they're trying to reopen their window by bringing up a lot of their younger guys, like Jacob Pelletier, Matthew Coronado, Dustin Wolf, and but my biggest concern is the defensive depth. I just this team is in a very frustrating position, and they, in my honest opinion, they cannot afford to re-sign Elias Lindholm. He is going to be too expensive, and he's hockey old, and the contract will be, pushing him into his late 30s, and they already have that. They're already doing that with Huberdeau, Weegar, and
Kadri.
Kadri. Why? You already have too much money, not too much money. These players deserve their paychecks, but you have enough money tied up, especially with a flat cap. Just can you please just go out and trade for like something legitimate? They did that last year, but do it again.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the assets for Calgary looks like at the top of my head, but
Mm-hmm.
the pick that they got from Matthew Tkachuk isn't until 2025 because of what the Panthers gave up in the previous trade deadlines. And I spoke about this on yesterday, how with the Panthers cap space coming up later, this next offseason, that there's only going to be 8 players under contract with 30 million. So the average AAV will be 2 million AAV
Wow.
to bring everybody back. So it might be a little bit of a struggle for the Panthers coming up this season. But also you got to consider what Craig Conroy in his very first season under GM, and taking away the attachment of Brad Treliving's
Mm-hmm.
trades and signees as well, and putting his own staple. What does he do? What does he do about a Noah Hannafin, Nikita Sidorov as well, which the Panthers
Right.
were somewhat in on Hannafin a few weeks ago, but looks like that conversation is going to be delayed, possibly for trade deadline for the Panthers, or even maybe if he hits the open market as well,
Mm-hmm.
let him be traded somewhere else and then possibly revisit that next summer, if
Yeah.
he doesn't sign an extension. But it's also the uncertainty of whether players want to be there or not for Calgary. And it's and you know, a lot of the national shows, one consistent question and statement that is always spoken about when it comes to the Calgary Flames is talking about, did Edmonton break them as well? That's one conversation I
No.
keep hearing. And I don't get why that. I get because it's a rivalry aspect of it, but
Yeah.
even when the Panthers got swept by Tampa Bay, I wasn't saying, oh, the
Tampa
Lightning
broke.
broke the Panthers
Yeah.
there.
No, and I think a lot of that does stem from the rivalry and Battle of Alberta, but these decisions were going to happen regardless if they won that series or not. If it went to 6 or 7, or they get eliminated in overtime in game 5. Like, Goodrow was more than likely going to leave regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Tkachuk wanted out. You can't just base this on like those final seconds of the game. There were obviously a lot of things that go into this. I think that a lot of Craig Conroy's really first year is going to be picking up the mess that Brad Treliving left, and that it's not going to happen overnight. This mess didn't get here overnight. It's not going to take an off season to clean up, but the Edmonton Oilers did not break the Flames.
Mm-hmm.
They did not. If that's what Oilers fans want to say, that's what they can say.
if that's what national
at least we
media
don't
people...
employ Evander Kane, and that's fine with me.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And I don't know if you saw his beer league name that he had.
No.
It's the acronym of mess around and find out. I'm saying the clean version of it.
Oh my God.
It's a little acronym.
Yes.
Based on that series against the Vegas Golden Knights. So a little bit of comedy there from Kane there. But as far as this upcoming season,
Mm-hmm.
what would for the Panthers, the goal is to make it back. But with the transition for Calgary, what's the expectation?
I will be happy with a wild card spot. I think that that's absolutely doable. I think that while the West has definitely gotten more competitive and stronger, I definitely think that the Pacific Division specifically has a lot of, rebuilding parts that are going to be at the bottom, like your San Jose,
Vancouver,
Anaheim, Vancouver. Like, you have those 3 spots taken up. You can absolutely fight for a decent spot in the standings. And I'm not going to go into this season and say Jacob Markstrom's going to have another Vezina candidate year. He's going to, completely bounce back. I think that, Matthew Coronado is going to be a front runner for the Calder, anything like that. I think the most important thing that Flames fans can do is manage those expectations so that way you aren't shattered and destroyed by them missing the playoffs or by them moving someone at the deadline. Like, you just have to just kind of take it at face value and be like, oh, it is what it is.
Yeah. So and knowing that possibly what you can get back in a trade as well, and use that as something to get someone else in a later trade deadline if the upcoming years are you exceed expectations as well.
Mm-hmm.
That could be something to flip around as well, especially if we're not seeing the cap rise at the rate that we hope to want in the upcoming years. But Jess, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this special crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Flames to discuss the trade, the big trade that shocked the NHL world. For my listeners, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes. So thank you again for having me. I'm very happy you could join me as well. You can find me at Jess Belmosto across all social media platforms. You can find the show at wherever you listen to Locked On Panthers, and just at Locked On Flames, obviously, and on Twitter at LO_FlamesPod. Armando, thank you for taking time and talking with me. You're kind of on the better end of this trade, so it's probably a little bit more fun for you. But where can Matthew Tkachuk stands find you and listen to everything you have to say?
Yeah, this this crossover was never about saying, "Ha they got the
No.
better part. You did not." This was
No.
not about it. It was just to discuss just the state of both teams and just really document the history behind two 100-point players being traded, just like
Mhm.
Gretzky and Jimmy Carson back in the 80s. But for Matthew Tkachuk stands and even Flames fans that are looking to cheer on Sam Bennett and Ryan Lomberg as
Yes.
well, they can find me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers as well. And yeah, that's where they can find the show, and on YouTube as well. So the subscribers, they're going up, up, and up thanks to the Stanley Cup final run for the Panthers.
Yes.
But Jess, thank you so much.
Thank you, Armando, and we'll see you probably during the season. We'll do a nice little preview.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jess Belmosto, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.